Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. If you are brand new here, a special welcome to you. I would really like to know how you heard about my channel, so please do let me know in the comments down below. This is a place where I talk about books, and I have finished 10 in the past week, so I have much to tell you about. But before I get to those, what's been going on here? Over Easter weekend, I went rowing on Saturday morning, and the water on the gorge here in Victoria, it was like glass. So it was just so nice to get out and row and see the herons and the ducks and an otter. Yeah. Then on Sunday, we went to a lesbian potluck. We first met this group of organizing women, the women in Dyke's Nation, last week when we went to Dyke open mic night at Camas Books, which I talked about last week. Anyway, the women there encouraged us to come to this intergenerational potluck, and it was a blast. We had a great time. And then later on, just this past week, it was Earth Day, and so on April 22nd, the Poet Laureate in Victoria organized a poetry reading in an outdoor location at the Inner Harbor here, and oh, it's so nice to sit in the sunshine and listen to the words of so many poets, including Yvonne Blomer. She was reading from her latest book, which I've talked about on this channel before, Death of Persephone. Yeah, they were all great. Yeah, it was. That's my idea of heaven. Just sitting in the sun, listening to poetry. And because it was Earth Day, buses were free transit all day in Victoria. So that was great too. So that's how Lori and I get around. All right, my other idea of heaven is to have lots of books to talk about, and I certainly do. I'm going to start with 3 picture books. There's a readathon going on right now that's hosted by Jack of Spread Book Joy and Shelley Swearingen. There'll be information in the description, so look for that if you want to know more. I'm going to start with Loujain Dreams of Sunflowers. It's a story inspired by Loujain AlHathloul. And the book is written by Loujain's youngest sister, Lina AlHathloul, and Mishra-Newbery, who is the social justice leader who led the Free Loujain campaign. Loujain herself is a Saudi women's rights activist. She attended university in Canada, and then when she went back to Saudi Arabia in 2013, she was arrested for driving. And since then, she's been arrested and imprisoned, I think 3 more times. And she's currently out of prison, but living under a lot of restrictions. She has been labeled a terrorist in her home country simply for advocating for women's rights there. So in this story, the child Loujain wants to learn how to fly like her father and like boys get to do when they grow up, which is such a great metaphor for driving and having the same rights as boys. The artist is Rebecca Green, and she has used colored pencil and acrylic gouache in kind of subdued primary colors. The pencil, I think, really captures the right age for this picture book, which is children ages 3 to 5. Look at that art. really great message in this picture book. And I'm counting it for People April as well. People April is the reading event hosted by Elizabeth of Bouquins and Books, Roz of Scallydandling about the books, and Brian of Bookish, and it's all about reading about real people. Next, I have a Palestinian picture book, These Olive Trees. It is written and illustrated by Aya Ghanameh. This is her debut. She is Palestinian. She and her family grew up in exile in Jordan. In the author's note, she explains that she based this story about a girl named Oreb on her own grandmother, Oreb. Her grandmother grew up in the Balata refugee camp, which is near the city of Nablus, and in 1967, her family had to flee again. So they had to leave once before during the Nakba, the Exodus in 1948, and then they had to move on again. And the story is tied to leaving a grove of olive trees that is very special to her and her family, and the cultural ties to olives and the olive trees are shown really well in here. Olives are not only food, but they are used for oil. The trimmings from the trees are used to start fires. The wood is used for carvings and tool handles, and oils used to make soap. The illustrations are done digitally, drawing first and then altered digitally. I love the way that clothing and food is incorporated into the illustrations. In this scene with cooking, look how in the stove, you can see that it's rusted, gas tank that's used to fuel the stove, what it's like to be living in a refugee camp, and when they're packing and moving, there's the truck. It's also rusted. So even though the style is stylized, there's still a lot of realism that comes through in this poignant story about not just any olives, but these special olive trees. I want to thank my subscriber who recommended that I read these olive trees. Sorry, I can't remember which one of you it was. Please identify yourself in the comments and remind me. I did talk about another Palestinian picture book in December. I will link that video down below, a map for Palestine. And the third picture book I have is the Canadian one, Into the Goblin Market. Vikki van Sickle with illustrations by Jensine Eckwall. So this is a retelling of Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market, although aimed at a younger readership. So we've got the two sisters, and one goes off to the Goblin Market and the other sister has to rescue her. It's done in ink, black and white, with just these pops of red. There's a nod to Little Red Riding Hood here. And it is told in rhyme, a rollicking, engaging, spooky, turns out well kind of story. It's great. Now I've got a bunch of adult books for you, including one with a goblin peddler in it. His name is Brackish, and he's one of the characters in Greenteeth by Molly O'Neill. I listened to this in audiobook, It's the British author's debut, and it's set in a fantasy version of 16th century England. It is narrated by Jenny Greenteeth, who is an English monster, a lake monster. And at the opening of the story, a witch has been thrown into her lake. So, what happens between these two, the witch and Jenny? It's very entertaining. It draws on Arthurian legend. It's a pretty classic quest adventure. There's the ending of the old ways, fading away of mythic beasts is what's happening. I found that the cover was a little too cutesy for what a Jenny Greenteeth is in my mind, but she is a pretty cranky, opinionated, ancient creature. Her voice really carries this tale. Next, I've got another audiobook, very different. This one is a collection of essays. It does have a bright green cover in the audio edition that I listened to. It's read by the author. It's called Sucker Punch, and it's by Scaachi Koul. Scaachi is a South Asian Canadian journalist. Her previous book came out in 2017, and it's got a long title, One Day We'll All Be Dead and None of This Will Matter. So in that earlier collection, she talked a lot about her white boyfriend, then fiance, and convincing her family that he was the man that she wanted to marry. In this latest book, she talks about her marriage breakdown and her divorce from this man. Also, in that earlier book, there was an essay. It was called something like A Good Egg, something along those lines. And in that, she talked about a former friend, someone she considered a friend, who did something terrible to her, who really betrayed her. And in this collection, she revisits that situation, and this time she's more forthcoming and talks about being raped. I like the way she says, some of my stories are dishonest, even if they were true at the time, but we all need the stories we tell ourselves. It's good to romanticize some of your own experiences in order to stay alive. Yeah, she also says, my ex was the hero of my first book because that's how it felt to me at the time. It's bad enough to lie to yourself privately, but to sell it to a public who believes those stories too feels like a scam. Anyway, her miserable marriage and subsequent divorce, and the way that she hid a lot of her anger and her pain, I found just so relatable. And I like this collection very much. Scaachi's relationship with her mother is loving, it's poignant. Scaachi grew up as the child of South Asian immigrants in very white Calgary, Alberta. And the main character in this next novel has a similar relationship with her mother. I'm talking about Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretser. It's a novel. Michelle de Kretser was born in Sri Lanka, and then as a girl or a teen, she moved with her family to very white Australia. And the main character in this novel, Cindy, is a novelist who is mostly talking about when she was a young woman in 1986, going to university in Melbourne and writing a thesis about Virginia Woolf, specifically her later novels, including The Years and The Waves, and I think one other one. She was reading Virginia Woolf's private diaries and learning things about Virginia Woolf that were disconcerting, because Virginia Woolf's writing kind of shaped her, made her what she was. And then when she learns about her bigotry and specifically her aversion to a particular Sri Lankan individual, that really gets this narrator in the heart. Her mother has little cameos in it in the form of phone messages that she's leaving for her daughter. I'll give you an example. I know you would have acknowledged the parcel straight away, so it must not have reached you yet. I went to the post office in my lunch break and asked them about it, and the man in charge said he was not aware of any strikes or delays here or in Melbourne. I'm afraid it must have been lost or stolen. I should have sent it registered, but it didn't occur to me at the time. As soon as I saw that shade of pink, I knew it would suit you. The wool is 8-ply Patton's Totem, which is a good brand and not cheap. The jumper had raglan sleeves, and I put a lot of work into knitting it. It's awful to think of it being lost. Yeah. So this novel opens with a short piece of historical fiction, and then the novelist stops and tells us, no, this is not the story I need to be telling. She gives us an anecdote, a true thing. The Israeli army commander, Aviv Kochavi, who in 2002, Kochavi used literary theory, situationist theory, to inspire him to use a different strategy when he was going after some Palestinians. So he led a group of soldiers on a raid in the West Bank city of Nablus, and they went through buildings instead of going in the streets. So anytime they came to a wall, they just bashed it in and traveled right through. So right through people's living rooms as they sat there, soldiers just went through. And since then, militaries around the world have also adopted this practice. Though she talks about how that link between theory and practice, the action that was taken based on that theory, seems pretty easy, but in real life she's found that there's a lot of mess in between theory and practice. So theory being our ideas about ourselves, our ideals especially, and how we actually act in this world. Are you being a good feminist if you are sleeping with someone else's boyfriend, for example? The whole synthesis of fact and fiction and how you tell your story, I found such a surprise and delight. I like when an author upends my expectations. We get to see through the later part of this book parts that the author took to create that early piece of historical fiction that we first were introduced to at the beginning of the book. And that insight into how art is created, I just love it so much. It actually reminds me of one of my favorite books by Helen Humphreys, Machine Without Horses, where she does something like that, showing how a novel about a real person gets put together. So this book is currently on the shortlist for the Stella Prize in Australia. And last year, the book that won the Stella Prize is this one, Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. I am going to be leading a group read of Praiseworthy starting May 1st. Got a lovely group of people who are going to be reading it with me. If you want to be added to the list, we're going to be discussing it on Voxer. Let me know in the comments. I will add your name. Really looking forward to getting to this chunkster. The way Michel de Kretser structured this is in short pieces, just separated by a printer's mark like that. It's not divided into chapters. And that's how this next novel is structured as well. This is Liars by Sarah Manguso. She's an American writer. I think she's written 9 books so far. I've read 3 of them. This one is a little like Theory and Practice in that it's also one of those books where you say, is it autofiction? Sure seems like it might be autofiction. And like Sucker Punch, Scaachi Koul's book, it is about an unhappy marriage and its dissolution. It's in the voice of a woman who is lying to herself about, that she's in a happy marriage, and also her deceitful, lying asshole of a husband. So no chapters, but all in short pieces. I'm just going to give you a taste of her writing style. Why are you so angry? My husband frequently asked me why I was so much angrier than other women. It always made me smile. I was exactly as angry as every other woman I knew. Sometimes not so much the anger in this book, but the situation that she, remained in this marriage that was obviously bad for her, really exasperated me. It made it hard to read at times. She says, I'd started my 5th book soon after I'd married John, and he'd given me notes. The book had sold fewer copies than my previous book. For years afterward, whenever the book came up in conversation, wherever we were, he always said, you should have put it into chapters. You should have listened to me. That book was a failure. Over and over again, through months and years, in front of other people even, I'd asked him to stop, but he never did. His criticism was impossible to reconcile with my insistence that I was happily married, so I refused to acknowledge it. From that point forward, every time I wrote anything, I worried that John would use it to cut me down. And he did. And I felt ashamed that I was married to someone who seemed to enjoy doing that. And these books are actually both about shame as well. So good, so good. Liars, by the way, is shortlisted for the Carol Shields Prize. The winner is going to be announced on May 1st, so that is coming right up. So reading it in a way was kind of like watching a train wreck. And speaking of train wrecks, my next book, Paris Express by Emma Donoghue, is based on a true event that happened in 1895 when a steam engine crashed right through the wall of the Montparnasse station. There's a photograph of it at the back. And extensive notes about the many characters in this book. So it's following this train's journey. It's an express train from Normandy heading into Paris, and the different individuals who are on this train in third class, second class, and first class, what's going on in their heads, in their interactions with each other. And it makes it quite propulsive. The crew on the train is worried about keeping to the schedule, so there's that time pressure there. There are individuals with plans and things happening to them on the train that are also kind of, get your pulse going. So it's a very fast read. Within this cast of characters, some of them are queer, and we've got Mado Peltier, who is absolutely raging at injustice. So rage, just women's rage in particular, seems to be quite a theme in my reading this week. This book had a weird printing thing, a pagination error that I hadn't seen before. Page numbers were typed right on top of the text. Kind of strange. Didn't really interfere with my reading though. And a writing technique I used in here that I really liked is to have a short epigraph right at the beginning of each chapter. And this next book did the same thing. So this one is nonfiction. Life in Three Dimensions, How Curiosity, Exploration, and Experience Make a Fuller, Better Life. It's by Shigehiro Oishi. He's a Japanese professor of psychology, and he's currently teaching in the US. And in each chapter, he's got an epigraph. I like that. This is all about the science of well-being. So how do you determine a good life? And one way is to measure happiness. Another way is to measure how meaningful your life is. And a third way is to measure how psychologically rich it is. And so the author goes into those three methods and talks about the possibility of having all three, maybe not at the same time, but within the same lifespan. So what is a psychologically rich life? I learned that if you have no regrets on your deathbed, that's a sign that you've lived a psychologically rich life. Psychologically rich experiences are not just ones that have novelty, but also complexity, intensity, and a change in perspective. So the question was raised, can you have a psychologically rich experience through reading? Which, of course, I was really interested in ideas about that. And the answer is maybe. It depends on the kind of book, the kind of reader that you are. If you are reading for escape and relaxation, that it's unlikely that you'll be getting a psychologically rich experience. You'll be getting other good things. Relaxation is good. But if you are reading for a challenge and staying open to having a change in perspective, then yes, you can have a psychologically rich experience through reading novels. Talk about the difference between traveling abroad as a tourist and living abroad, and how there are so many more challenges and exposure to new ways of thinking when you are living abroad. Oishi writes, "Time spent living abroad helps us gain a clearer sense of ourselves and the life we want to pursue. Individuals who have more foreign experience tend to hold fewer negative stereotypes and prejudices and trust others more, and are better able to understand and relate to others." And also, engaging in artistic activities is more likely to give us psychologically rich experience than other kinds of activities like shopping or going to parties, stuff like that. He also talks about the art of storytelling and how the stories we tell ourselves about our lives make a difference in how psychologically rich our experiences are. So I immediately thought about Scaachi Koul and how she had two different versions, an earlier one and then a more mature one about that experience with the friend who raped her. And I also thought about Sarah Polley in her essay collection, Run Towards the Danger. She talks about her experience with a rapist who, when a bunch of women got together, I'm not going to say his name here, but a bunch of women got together to bring charges against him, she did not join in that lawsuit because she had been telling a story about her encounter with this man as kind of a jokey anecdote for a number of years. And it was something that she told to save herself, to make herself feel better about having experienced that. But also she felt like it was impossible for her then to turn around and say in court, "This hurt me." So, what we do to make sense of what happens to us and the actions that we take and the reactions that we have are all explored in Life in Three Dimensions. I thought this is excellent. Okay, I'm up to my final book now, White Rose by Kip Wilson. This is historical fiction set during World War II, and it's a fat book. My YA book club chose this, and I had been putting off picking it up. Because World War II, what's going to be new about a story set in World War II? And B, it's fat. It's a long book. I always have a resistance to fatter books. But I started reading it. I hadn't remembered that it is in verse. So it's narrative verse. So it's actually a very quick read. And I was so gripped by the story. So this is based on a true story. An organization called the White Rose. Well, that's the English translation. So these are young people in Nazi Germany. They were an anti-Hitler youth group. So huge dangers for them. The story goes back and forth, and it's clearly, the sections are clearly labeled with before and the end. In the opening, a brother and sister have been apprehended by the Gestapo and they're being interrogated. There's a repeated quatrain of boom, 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 the heartbeat thumping, the fear, the adrenaline of, what it takes to have the courage for these actions. I ended up reading this in one sitting. Oh, it's mostly in the voice of Sophie Scholl. Occasionally, we have the voice of a member of the Gestapo and a few other people to give us a slightly different perspective. And also there are some letters back and forth. So altogether, this picture of what life was like at that time just comes through so strongly. The feelings come through so strongly. And the situation where young people are standing up to formidable power, I just find so inspiring. This is the kind of message that we need in these times. This book is aimed at ages 12 and up. I highly recommend it. Yeah. It's so good. The author, by the way, lives in Boston. She is the poetry editor of Young Adult Review Network. Great job, Kip Wilson. And that is all I've got for you today. So I want to thank you so very much for watching. I want to know if you have read any of these, or are you intending to pick any of them up? I want to know what you're reading. Let me know in the comments, or just say hello. Give me a flower emoji if you don't have anything else to say. Lilacs are starting to bloom here. Love it. Thanks again. I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.